So welcome everyone, and I hope you have watched that intro, right? So you know something about Shakespeare, something about Shakespearean plays, and especially Shakespearean comedies, right? So what are the features of Shakespearean comedies? Of course, there is romance in the air, there is disguise, love, and then another main theme that runs throughout is appearances versus reality. How appearances can be deceptive. So these are a few themes, recurrent themes that we find in Shakespearean comedies. And coming to Twelfth Night, we again find same themes being repeated in a very different story, in a very different plot line. And I hope you are familiar with the characters, right? Who are the characters in this play, Twelfth Night? Or it has got another title as well, What You Will. So who are the characters?
Olivia.
We have Olivia, Lady Olivia. We have Duke Orsino. We have Viola and Sebastian, the twins. We have a few sailors and captains. And then we have a few interesting characters, Maria, Sir Toby, Belch, Andrew Aguchick. And there is one there is a steward of the house, Malvolio, and a few fools and jesters, right? So they are the main characters who play a key role in the play. And we find two plots going simultaneously in the play. We have a main plot, the romance between Lady Olivia, Duke, Viola, and Sebastian, between them. And then there is the subplot of Sir Toby Belch, Maria, Malvolio, and so on. So we have got two plots here, and of course we find disguise, gender reversal, roles are being reversed. Typical of Shakespearean comedies, we find the songs and songs by fools. So these are a few things that we find in almost all Shakespearean comedies. And in Twelfth Night also we find similar themes being dealt with. And coming to the number of acts, we have got 5 acts in the play. So we'll this is for detailed study. So we'll read the passages which are really important for your from the exam point of view. There are certain passages which can be asked for annotation. So we will read those in the class. And those which are not that important, certain scenes which are not that important, we'll skip those scenes, but rest of the scenes we'll read in the class. And if you have any doubts, you can ask me in between. So I hope we'll right away begin the play. I want all of you to turn to Act 1, Scene 1. Have you taken the book? Act 1, Scene 1. The setting is the Duke's palace. Excuse me. So enter Orsino, Duke of Illyria, Curio, and other lords, musicians attending. So just imagine. And meanwhile, have you watched the movie Twelfth Night? I mean the play? Maybe in the audiovisual. Did you? Yes or no?
No, ma'am.
Alright, so maybe this coming week, when you get free hours, please try to watch it. I'll make arrangements so that you can go to the audiovisual room and you can watch the play. Or otherwise, I will share a link in the Google Classroom as well about the play, of the play. One version of that play, so you can watch it. So right from the beginning, so this is the setting. The first scene is that of the Duke's palace. Now we are introduced to this hero, the Duke of Illyria, an imaginary place in Italy. Duke, and there are lords attending to him, and musicians are playing, and then we find Duke, contemplating on music, on love. Duke: if music be the food of love, play on, give me excess of it, that surfeiting the appetite may sicken and so die. That strain again, it had a dying fall. Oh, it came o'er my ear like the sweet sound that breathes upon a bank of violets, stealing and giving order. Enough, no more. It's not so sweet now as it was before. O Spirit of love, how quick and fresh art thou! that notwithstanding the capacity receiveth as a sea, not enters there of what validity and pitch soever, but falls into abatement and low price, even in a minute. So full of shapes is fancy, that it alone is high fantastical. So in the first passage, the dialogue, he hears the musicians playing, and hearing the music, he contemplates and says, if music is the food of love, if music is, if music nurtures love, then keep on playing, because I am madly in love with this lady Olivia. So just play on. And I want excess of this music, excess of this food. So here we find this metaphor, music being compared with food. And if music is the food of love, then I want this food more. I want excess of it. But at the same time, he says, the appetite may sicken and so die. If you have something of excess, even if it is your favorite food, just imagine you are having food, and even if it is your favorite food, if you eat too much, or if you are too full, then you will lose appetite, right? So likewise, he says, this music, it's a food of love, food that nurtures love. But if I am given too much of it, I'll get sickened. I'll lose my appetite, and I'm sickened of it. You get vomity. You won't like it after some time. So that's the first thing that he makes, first comment he makes. And then he listens to the music again and says, oh, it has got a dying fall, the fall and rise of that some music. It came over my ear like sweet sound. So first, that is the first feeling that the Duke had. It was like it was very sweet, as if stealing the fragrance from the bank of violets. But all of a sudden, I don't want to hear anymore. I am too full of that music. Now I can't, I lost appetite, or I cannot enjoy that music anymore. He says, no, it's enough and no more. I don't want it. And then he again contemplates, says, this is similar to the spirit of love. Love is also like that. It is so quick and fresh. You fall in love so quickly, and it is so fresh, and and like sea has got the capacity of, it's a kind of reservoir which can hold anything at any number. But here he says, it is like that, love is like that. But all of a sudden, it can change. It can change to it can fall into abatement or low price, or it can become cheap, and it can one can lose interest. So very quickly you can fall in love, and it is so fresh, and you are so so intoxicated with love. But at the same time, after all of a sudden it can change. Your feelings can change. Actually, he talks about the temporary or transient nature of human feelings, and even in a minute it can stoop to such a level. So full of shapes is fancy, or different, or lovers, it is fantastical, or it is such a it is it's fanciful, it is fantastical. There is something beyond reality to this concept or feeling of love. That is what he says. Did you understand the comparisons that Duke is trying to make? With the first conversation itself, we come to know that Duke is a person who is romantic, who is contemplating on love, who is reflecting on love, and maybe he is falling in with the feeling love itself. More than loving Lady Olivia, he has a feeling, or he actually exalts love itself. Is it clear? Am I clear to you?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so this is how. All right, so we get to know the temperament of the Duke from the first stanza, first dialogue itself. And the Lords with him says, if you are fed up of this music, we'll go for hunting. Curio, will you go hunt, my lord? So shall we go for hunting? Now you says, you don't want to listen to the music, and you have lost appetite for music. So shall we go for hunting? What, Curio? The Duke says, the heart. Why so I do, the noblest that I have. Oh, when mine eyes did see Olivia first. Methought she purged the air of pestilence. That instant was I turned into a heart, and my desires, like fell and cruel haunts, ever since pursue me. So here we find a pun. Shakespeare in all the plays and in comedies especially uses puns. And so here Curio says, we'll go for hunting. And what says the Duke? Hart. H-A-R-T. Hart stands for deer. It means deer. But at the same time, it's a pun on the word heart. H-E-A-R-T, heart. Did you get it? Actually, H-A-R-T, heart is, deer. It stands for deer. And the pun that the Duke plays with this word heart is, he takes it for heart, H-E-A-R-T, heart, and he makes a comparison. Again, there is this allusion. One allusion is made here. It's about this Diana. There is this young hunter, Actaeon, and this hunter one day found this Diana, who was going for hunt. She was actually bathing in the forest, and while hunting, this Actaeon happened to see this Diana, and Diana cursed, this goddess Diana cursed this Actaeon, this hunter. And this Actaeon, these hunters, they have hounds, right, for which who help them for hunting. So these dogs or hounds, his own dogs, his own hunting dogs, Actaeon's own hunting dogs, was pounced on him. He was changed into a deer. This Diana cursed him and changed him into a deer, and his own hunting dogs killed him. Did you get that story? The mythology from the Greek mythology. His own hunting dogs killed him when he was turned into a deer by goddess Diana, for because he happened to see her bathing in the forest. So this is the story. The allusion is to this Greek mythology, Greek story. And Duke says, let's see how he compares Actaeon with himself. Excuse me. Why so I do, the noblest that I have, I have that noblest heart. And what happened, when mine eyes did see first Olivia, so even at the first sight, I fell in love with him. I fell in love with her. Methought she purged the air of pestilence. She purified this air of all foul odor and everything. She was so pure and innocent, and her breath was so fragrant that she purged the air of pestilence. And that instant itself, what happened? I was turned into a heart. I was turned into a deer, and my own desires and my own love, and I was captured by love. My own feelings, like hounds, like cruel hounds, fell on me and pursuing me. And ever since, those those hunting dogs are pursuing me. Like what, how these hunting dogs pursued Actaeon. Similarly, my own feelings, my own desires, and my love for Lady Olivia is pursuing me since I first saw Lady Olivia, like the hounds pursued Actaeon. Is that comparison clear? Did you understand that comparison?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so you can mark these passages for annotation. How his love for Lady Olivia is compared with the story, or is explained with the story of Actaeon the hunter. And also the first passage, if music be the food of love, play on, give me excess of it. So you can mark that also for annotation. End of Valentine. So another gentleman arrives. How now? What news from her? Duke asks. So we come to know that this Valentine was sent to Lady Olivia to woo her. Valentine, so please, my lord, I might not be admitted, but from her handmaid do return this answer. The element itself, till 7 years' heat, shall not behold her face at ample view, but like a cloistress she will veiled walk, and water once a day her chamber round with eye-offending brine. All this to season a brother's dead love, which she would keep fresh, unlasting in her sad remembrance. So Valentine makes a sad report, gives a sad report to the Duke, and says, I was not admitted to see Lady Olivia. Her handmaid returned me with an answer. And what is it? The element, she refused to see the element itself. For 7 summers heat or 7 years heat, for 7 long years, she has decided not to go out, and but live like a cloistress or live like a nun inside the confined in the house. She won't admit any men. She don't want the company of any men. And now we understand that this Lady Olivia is a very beautiful rich lady, and her father passed away a year ago, and a few months ago her brother also passed away, and now she's in mourning, and she's mourning for the death of her brother. And she says she has actually despised the company of men, and she said, I will not and shall not behold her face at ample view. She's putting a veil over her face, and she says, I won't give face, or I don't want to talk to any men, but like a cloistress or a nun, she will veiled walk. With a veil she will walk, and water once a day her chamber round, with eye offending Brian, or I am, that is in tears. I will shed tears. Once every day I will shed tears. She has actually decided to shed tears for her dead brother. All this to season a brother's dead love. In order to remember the love of her brother, in order to in remembrance of her brother, she will shed tears every day, which she would keep fresh and lasting in her remembrance, in her sad remembrance. So this is we are get to know something about Lady Olivia also from the very first scene itself. Duke, oh, she that hath a heart of that fine frame, to pay this debt of love but to a brother. How will she love when a rich golden shaft hath killed the flock of all affections else that live in her, when liver, brain, and heart, these sovereign thrones are all supplied and filled, her sweet perfections with one self-king. Away before me to sweet beds of flowers, love thoughts lie rich when canopied with bowers. So we find, so what is the answer given by Valentine? She refused to see Valentine. She refused to get see the messenger sent by Duke. But Valentine makes that clear to Duke. But Duke, on the other hand, he is not complaining that he couldn't meet, this Valentine couldn't meet Lady Olivia. He is not bothered about that, and he is not fretting over that issue. But he is contemplating on something else. He romanticizes this situation and says, oh, she has got a fine heart, who is spending so much of her time and energy in remembering her dead brother. So then he imagines, if what happens if this woman falls in love with someone, if the golden shaft, the Cupid's arrow, is pointed, if she's struck by the Cupid's arrow, and all other affections are all other affections will wane, affection for father, mother, or brothers and other siblings, and apart from that, if her love is concentrated or focused on only one person alone, when if she falls in love with a man, then he says, how intensely she will love that man. He is contemplating on how intensely or how seriously Lady Olivia will love a man. He is actually fantasizing that, in spite of complaining or getting irritated or instead of fretting about about the denial, he is again contemplating on romance and love and how she will love and so on. This is the temperament of Duke, which is revealed in the first scene itself. And then he asks the lords and says, we'll move to the garden, to the sweet beds of flowers, under which I can again, where again he wants to contemplate on such thoughts, where love thoughts lie rich when canopied with the bowers, in that on the bed of sweet flowers, I can think more and more about her love, maybe Lady Olivia also. So this is how the scene ends. The first Act 1 scene one ends with this, that is the Duke's palace. And then again, in the same act, we find the scene changes to the sea coast, where we find Viola and the sailor. We find that there is a shipwreck. A shipwreck has already been the tragedy has already befallen. And this is another feature of Shakespearean comedies. The tragedies are not the men, or tragic scenes are not shown, but it has already happened. And Viola and these sailors, they are rescued, and now they are on the coast, and they are having a conversation with each other. So scene 2, the sea coast. Enter Viola, a captain, and a few sailors. Viola: what country, friends, is this? This is Illyria, lady. And what should I do in Illyria? My brother, he is in Elysium. Perchance he is not drowned. What think you, sailors? So now we find that, so somebody she's also lamenting, and she's not sure if her brother has escaped or if he is rescued by someone. So there is a shipwreck, and a few sailors and the captain and this Viola, they escape to this shore, Illyria. And Elysium is paradise. So she imagines, her brother might have been dead and gone and is in heaven, in paradise. So he says, when my brother is in Elysium, what am I doing in this place, Illyria? Perchance, he is not drowned. If God willing, maybe he also might have escaped like me. Captain: it is perchance that you yourself were saved. So you are lucky that you yourself was saved. So similarly, your brother will also might have been rescued by someone. Viola: oh, my poor brother, and so perchance may he be. So we find again, we find we find two ladies mourning the loss of their brothers. One is Lady Olivia mourning the death of her brother. Now here Viola, she also thinks that, later on we find that her brother is alive. Her brother Sebastian is alive. But now, for now, Viola thinks that her brother is dead. But instead of, keep on mourning for the death of death of his brother, she actually moves forward in life and asks the captain, what can I do in this strange place? I need protection in this strange place. How can I, as long, when time comes, or till the time comes, and I want some place to stay, what can I do? What can I do? She appears to be practical. And throughout the play, we find Viola is one person who is very observant and who makes objective comments on, and also the fool Feste also. So Viola is one character who has a presence of mind and common sense, and who is not carried away with romance and other things. Of course, she falls in love with the Duke after some time, but she's not carried away with these things. Captain replies: true, madam, and to comfort you with chance, assure yourself, after our ship did split, when you and those poor numbers saved with you hung on our driving boat, I saw your brother, most provident in peril, bind himself, courage and hope, both teaching him the practice, to a strong mast that he lived upon the sea, where like Arion on the dolphin's back, I saw him hold acquaintance with the waves so long as I could see. So now the captain gives hope to Viola, saying that when we were saved, I saw your brother clutching on a piece of wood and flowing with the water. He was not drowning, like Arion. Arion is, again, we find an allusion to the Greek story. Arion was being tried to kill when when people were trying to kill him. He jumped into the water, jumped into the sea. He plays a sweet music, and with the music, a dolphin came and he sat on the dolphin's back, and he was saved from drowning. So similarly, this Sebastian is compared to this Arion who was saved by a dolphin. So this he was holding on to a piece of wood to a strong mast. So I hope that he will leave, because he is most provident in peril. You know, he has the presence of mind, he is courageous, he is hopeful. So don't lose heart. You know, he will be saved, and you yourself is his testimony that he will also be saved. You can mark that association also for annotation, where like Arion on the dolphin's back, I saw him hold acquaintance with the waves so long as I could see. You know, he was moving along with the current, and he was not drowning. Viola, for saying so, there is gold. You know, I'll give some gold for saying such good thing about my brother. Mine own escape unfold to my hope. You know, my own escape or my own rescue is a testimony that my brother will also live. Whereto thy speech serves for authority, and also you are a sailor. So I know you, I take your word seriously. The like, knowest thou this country? Do you know this country? Captain, I, madam. Well, for I was bred and born not 3 hours travel from this place. You know, I live very close to this place. You know, only 3 hours journey from here, and I know this place. Who governs here? A noble duke, in nature as in name. So a very noble duke rules this place. And what is his name? Orsino. Oh, Orsino, I have heard my father name him. He was a bachelor then, so I have heard about him. And he was a bachelor, captain, and so is now, or so was very late, but a month ago I went from hence, and then it was fresh in murmur, as you know, what great ones do, the less will prattle of, that he did seek the love of fair Olivia. So almost a month ago, this was in the air. You know, this murmur, there was a rumor that he was trying to seek the love of fair Olivia. And then you can mark this also passage for annotation. What great ones do, the less will prattle of. You know, that is what happens in our society as well. You know, if something bad or something good, you know, whatever happens with great ones, a popular one, with celebrities, you know, people like to talk about it. You know, or even if it is not true, you know, rumors will be spread faster. So will spread faster. So likewise, no, there was a rumor, a murmur it was fresh. There was a fresh rumor that he was seeking the love of fair Olivia. And who is she? While I was asking the situation of that country, so who is this Olivia, by the way? Or Captain replies, a virtuous maid, the daughter of a count that died 12 months since. You know, her father died almost a year ago. Then leaving her in the protection of his son, her brother, who shortly also died, for whose dear love they say she hath abjured the sight and company of men. And she is mourning the death of her father and her brother especially, and she has abjured the company of men. She refuses to see any men. Viola, oh, that I serve that lady and might not be delivered to the world. So I know I need a safe place to stay. So I hope, you know, I can serve this lady meanwhile, so that, you know, I will be protected from this world. I will not be delivered into the wrong hands. Till I had made my own occasion mellow, what my estate is, till I find out what, find out my way home and so on, what will happen with me. But Captain says, no, it is not possible, because she will not accept any messenger that were hard to compass, because she will admit no kind of suit. You know, she will not accept any messenger. No, not even the dukes. So then Viola gets another idea. Then Viola says, you know, okay, if that is the case, you know, I will serve the duke, and I will change my dress. I will disguise as a eunuch, and you can take me to the duke. There is a fair behavior in thee, captain, and though that nature with a beauteous wall doth oft close in pollution, yet of thee I will believe thou hast a mind that suits with this thy fair and outward character. So again, you can mark this passage for annotation. You know, this Elizabethan's preoccupation with appearance and reality. appearance, and how appearances can be deceptive. So what he says is that usually a fair face covers a polluted heart, or there is a fair behavior, a fair nature. With us, you have a beautiful face, a beauteous wall, but inside there is a beauteous wall, but inside there is pollution. You will have a very fair nature, behavior, and appearance, but your intention may not be good. Your inside, your heart is wicked. So it is usually like that in society, well assessed. But in your case, your appearance is good as well as your intentions are also good. I trust your intentions. So your mind, your outward character, and your inward character, your outward appearance and your character, both are fair. And I pray thee, I will pay thee bounteously. When I am in power, I will pay you well. Conceal me what I am. Please conceal my identity. Don't reveal my identity till I say, for such disguise as haply shall become the form of my intent, I will serve this duke. Thou shalt present me as an eunuch to him. It may be worth thy pains, for I can sing and speak to him in many sorts of music that will allow me very worth his service. What else may hap to time I will commit. Only shape thou thy silence to my wit. So I demand only one thing. I demand silence from you. Please don't reveal my identity. Conceal who I am, and I will disguise as a man. And you need to present me as an eunuch before the duke, and I will spend, I can sing and I can entertain him. And meanwhile, we'll find out what can be done. And the captain agrees. Be you his eunuch, and your mute I will be, and I will be silent. When my tongue blabs, then let mine eyes not see. So if I blab, if I reveal your identity, let me be beheaded. Only if, because he promises that he won't reveal her true identity. And she disguises as a eunuch and is presented before the duke, and the duke gets very attached to this new eunuch. And that is what we find in the coming scenes, how she becomes the favorite of the duke. While I thank thee, lead me on. So thus ends the second scene. So in the third scene, we are taken to Olivia's house. We are introduced to Lady Olivia, her servants, Sir Toby Welch, Andrew Aguchick, and what is happening in the household of Lady Olivia. Is it clear? Shall we read scene 3 also?
Yes.
It's actually a very simple scene, where we have a funny, witty repartee between, witty conversations between Sir Toby Welch, Mariah, and Andrew Aguchick. And we find this Mariah and Toby Welch, Toby Welch and Andrew Aguchick engaged in merrymaking, and Malvolio is getting angry with them. And so it's a very it's a scene which is from exam point of view, it's not that important. But we are introduced to these characters. We'll see whom we are going to meet in this scene. Scene 3, enters Sir Toby Welch and only Mariah. What a plague means my niece to take the death of her brother thus. I am sure care is an enemy to life. So he says, I don't like the fact that my niece is taking the death of her brother to her heart and mourning like this. This care is an enemy to life. And he is a very carefree person, this Toby Welch, and he loves drinking, and that is how he spent his time. And we find Mariah, her servant there, the maid there. She is chiding Sir Toby Welch for drinking too much and bringing a knight along with him. There is this knight, Sir Andrew Aguchick, whom the Sir Toby has brought by saying that this man is in love with Lady Olivia, and Sir Toby Welch has taken money from this man. So this is what we find in this play, in this scene, in scene 3. So he has taken money from this rich knight, promising that he will get married to Lady Olivia. So these are the things that we find here in this scene. And Maria says, you must come in earlier, oh knights. Your cousin, my lady, takes great exceptions to your in-laws. We find that this man has been drinking late and has come home very late, and Maria chides, saying that your this cousin Lady Olivia doesn't like you coming so late drunk and all those things, and also fooling with that foolish knight, you are coming. So Lady Olivia is very disturbed with your behavior. We'll leave that. And Sir Toby in between says, here he has, that is lines 20, 19, 20. Have you seen? Why? He has 3,000 ducats a year. So that is one thing. He's a very rich man, and I have taken money from him. So I don't mind, he's just fooling around. And we'll leave this. So we find this conversation between Sir Toby and Sir Maria about this fool, and about Sir Andrew Eguchi. Excuse me. And meanwhile, in lines 55, lines 40, Sir Andrew comes. From that line onwards, we find Sir Andrew also joining Sir Toby and Maria, and they are having fun, and they are having some witty dialogues. Both Andrew and Sir Toby Belch, both are drunk. So, and the scene ends with that. We won't read that scene. So scene 4. So again we are taken back to Duke's palace. So did you see that? Scene 4, the Duke's palace.
Yes, ma'am.
Alright, so enter Valentine and Viola as Cesario in man's attire. So Viola is now dressed as a man, and she's calling himself a Cesario. In man's attire, we find them. If the Duke continue these favors, so Valentine, another lord, is talking to Cesario, saying, because the Duke has some sort of favor towards this Cesario, and you have come here just for 3 days. It's only 3 days, and meanwhile she has become the Duke's favorite. If the Duke continue these favors towards you, Cesario, you are like to be much advanced or promoted. He will give you some promotion of some sort. He hath known you but 3 days, and already you are not a stranger to him. You either fear his humor or my negligence, that you call in question the continuance of his love. Is he consistent in his favors? So, but Cesario is not overwhelmed by the Duke's behavior, because she has observed the Duke, and she says, is this Duke consistent or constant in his behavior? Is he inconstant, or is he consistent in his behavior? Because I cannot actually trust his feelings. He says, yes, I am highly favored now before him, but I cannot trust him completely. And no, believe me, I thank you. Here comes the Count. The Duke enters. Whoso, Cesario? Cesario, on your attendance, my lord. Duke, stand you a while aloof, Cesario. Thou knowest no less, but all I have unclasped to thee the book even of my secret soul. So now we find that this Duke has revealed his love for Lady Olivia to Cesario, and there is no secret hidden. Therefore, good youth, address thy gate unto her, be not denied access, stand at her doors, and tell them that thy fixed foot shall grow till thou have audience. So now the Duke wants Cesario to go and woo Lady Olivia on his behalf. He says, till you get admitted to the presence of the lady of the house, to Lady Olivia, be there and don't move, don't accept denial. You need to go and address this fair Lady Olivia, and woo for me Cesario, show my noble lord, if she be so abundant to her sorrow as it is spoke, she never will admit me. But if she is mourning the death of her brother, she won't admit me. Duke, be clamorous and leave all civil bounds. Don't you don't have to think that it is you don't have to be cautious about being delicate and refined and sophisticated. You can leave all civil bounds and be clamorous, and makes noise until you get admitted to her presence. Make some sort of noise, or don't come back unprofited, rather than make unprofited return. Cesario, say, I do speak with her, my lord. What then? So if I get to speak to her, what should I say? Duke, oh, then unfold the passion of my love. So if you get chance to pass my message, so unfold the passion of my love, surprise her with discourse of my dear faith. It shall become thee well to act my woes. She will attempt it better in thy youth than in nuncio of grave aspect. Another nuncio is a messenger, is an Italian word for messenger. So you are very young, and she will listen to you rather than from a older messenger. So you can talk, you can tell her how I love her, and you can tell her of my faith, and she will listen to you because you are very young. Cesario, I think not so, my lord. Duke, dear lad, believe it. No, don't say that. She will listen to you. The Duke is so sure that Olivia will listen to Cesario. For they shall yet belie thy happy years that say thou art a man. Of course, we say that you are a man, but you are not. You are a very young person. Diana's lip is not more smooth and rubious. Your lips are so smooth and rubious, similar to goddesses Diana's. And thy small pipe, your sound is very sweet, is as the maiden's organ. So you speak like a woman. And you remember, she's being presented as a eunuch, and the Duke says, your sound is also very womanly, shrill and sound, and all is semblance of a woman's part. Everything, it actually is like a woman's part, like a woman. I know that constellation is right apt, and this kind of stature, this appearance suits for this purpose, in order to woo her. I know that constellation, or this built-up, is right apt for this kind of affair. Some 4 or 5 attend him all, and he gives orders for other people to attend to Cesario and make arrangements so that he can go and woo Lady Olivia. When least in company, I myself am best when I am least in company. So I need to enjoy the solitude. When I am solitary, I am best. Again we find he contemplating on love and being alone, and wallowing in self-pity and love. Prosper well in this. He actually wishes good luck to Cesario, and thou shalt leave us freely as thy lord, to call his fortunes thine. So if you succeed in this, you can live freely, and you can enjoy the fortunes of your lord Cesario. I will do my best to woo your lady. So, and she goes. But Azide is, without the other character being heard, she makes a comment which is audible to the audience alone. And what is that? At a barful strife, whoever I woo myself would be his wife. So now we find another twist in the story. So Cesario says, whoever I woo for Duke Orsino, I myself will be his wife. She has fallen in love with the Duke. So that is what we find in scene 4. We find Duke favoring Cesario over other lords, and at the same time Viola falling in love with Duke Orsino. And scene 5 again goes back to Olivia's household, and we find again a very witty dialogue. a dialogue between Maria and Feste. Another character is introduced, that is the fool who has gone missing for quite a number of days, and now he has come back, and Maria is again chiding this Feste for being absent from the household for so long. And she says, Lady Olivia will be very angry towards you. And meanwhile, Olivia also enters, and Olivia takes this fool in a very light-hearted manner, and Olivia and Feste also makes a few they engage in a conversation which is again very witty. And we'll read one conversation between Olivia and Feste, where Feste tries to prove Olivia that Olivia is foolish to mourn the death of her brother like this. We'll read that passage alone, and then we'll move on to the next scene where Cesario, the same scene where Cesario comes to meet Olivia. Lines. All right, there is one account where lines 55. Could you please look at come to that lines, scene 5, lines 55, where the fool is trying to prove Olivia that she is being foolish. Feste asks, "Good Madonna, why mournest thou? Why are you mourning?" Then Olivia says, "Good fool, for my brother's death. I think his soul is in hell, Madonna." Olivia, "I know his soul is in heaven." So that is the argument that the fool makes. So if your brother is in heaven, why are you mourning? So if you are mourning, your brother is in hell. That is the argument that he makes. The more fool, Madonna, to mourn for your brother's soul being in heaven. So you are being foolish to mourn the death of a brother who is now in heaven, who is more happier than when he was alive. Take away the fool, gentlemen. So he says, so he is not the fool, but Lady Olivia is the fool. So there is a very brief account between Feste and Olivia. So likewise, we find similar repartees, witty arguments made by the fool, and then we are introduced to the steward of that house, that is Malvolio. And this Malvolio is so much fed up of Sir Toby, Sir Andrew, and also with Feste. He is not entertained. He don't get entertained with the fool, and he says. And Olivia, on the other hand, pays high regard towards Malvolio and says, "What think you of this fool, Malvolio? Doth he not mend? Won't he improve this fool?" Malvolio, "Yes, and shall do till the pangs of death shake him. Infirmity that decays the wise doth ever make the better fool." And then he says, "I don't know why you are so much, why you take or why you are entertained by this fool." We find this Malvolio is a typical Puritan who rejects all sort of entertainments, merrymaking. He's against drinking. He doesn't like drinking. But at the same time, we find that he's a hypocrite. And inside, actually, secretly, he too wishes to marry Lady Olivia. And Shakespeare, by representing Malvolio as a Puritan, he talks even during that Elizabethan period, these Elizabethans, they had some sort of hatred towards Puritans. Puritans are extreme Protestants. At that point of time, during the reign of Queen Elizabeth, these Puritans were under check. And Shakespeare, of course, in other place also, we find Puritans represented in a very bad light. So here we find this Malvolio, a Puritan who is represented in a very bad light, and he is tortured and he is considered to be mad. Towards the end, we'll find how Maria, Sir Toby, and Sir Andrew Aguecheek, and also Feste play with him and make a fool out of him. So we'll deal with that. And Malvolio says, and I marvel, your ladyship takes such a delight in this baron, this stupid fool, and I cannot believe it. And we find all these, these characters, they are in Olivia's household and are engaging in these conversations. And meanwhile, Maria comes and says, there is somebody there is a messenger that has come. And we'll see that lines 81. Enter Maria. Maria, madam, there is at the gate a young gentleman, much desires to speak with you. So Maria comes and makes the announcement. We are introduced to Cesario, coming to Olivia's household. So there is a messenger. Olivia, from the Count Orsino, is it? I know not, madam. It's a fair young man and well attended. Who of my people hold him in delay? Sir Toby, madam, your kinsman. Your kinsman is, actually, he has denied entrance. And fetch him off, I pray you. He speaks nothing but madman. This Sir Toby, he might have been drunk and will speak like a madman. So, fire on him. Go you, Malvolio. If it be a suit from the Count, I am sick or not at home. So, if it is a messenger from the or from the Duke, you can say that I am sick or I am not at house. You can say whatever to dismiss it. Exit Malvolio. Now you see, sir, how your fooling grows old and people dislike it. Here she is talking to Feste. And Feste, thou hast spoke for us, Madonna, as if thy eldest son should be a fool, whose skull Joe crammed with brains. For here he comes, one of thy kin has a most weak parameter or weak brain, Sir Toby. So Toby has come. By mine honor, half drunk. What is he at the gate, cousin? A gentleman. A gentleman? What gentleman? It's a gentleman here. A plague of these pickle herring. How now? We find the language used by Sir Toby, Maria, and also the fool. It is different from the language, the fine poetry that comes from Cesario, Duke, and even Olivia. And so we find how this Feste, Sir Toby is angry with the messenger at the gate, and Malvolio again comes, says, lines 18. Malvolio, madam, yon young fellow swears he will speak with you. I told him you were sick. He takes on him to understand so much, and therefore comes to speak with you. I told him you were asleep. He seems to have a foreknowledge of that too, and therefore comes to speak with you. What is to be said to him, lady? He is fortified against any denial. So I couldn't dismiss him. I was telling him all these things, but he is not ready to accept any of this. And tell him he shall not speak with me, has been told so, and he says he will stand at your door like a sheriff's post and be a supporter to a bench, but he will speak with you. So I have told you that you won't speak to him, but he says, I will make a post there, like a watchman watching, like a sheriff's post, I will be there, glued to the ground till I get admitted to Lady Olivia. And now Olivia gets curious to know who this messenger is. What kind of man is he? Why, of mankind. What manner of man? Of very ill manner. He is behaving very badly with us. He will speak with you. Will you or no? Of what personage and years is he? And so again, we find Olivia getting curious about the appearance and age of this new messenger. Not yet old enough for a man, nor young enough for a boy. We cannot say that he's a boy, and we cannot say that he's a man. As a squash is before its best cut, or before a fruit is being ripe, but it is not raw. It is not ripe as well. So that is how he is. And also he makes one more comment. One would think his mother's milk were scarce out of him. He's just out of puberty, you can say. And let him approach. Call in my gentlewoman, my lady calls. Enter Maria. Olivia, give me my veil. And she covers her face. Come, throw it over my face well once. More here, Orsino's embassy. Again, Viola enters in the guise of Cesario along with the attendants. the honorable lady of the house, which is she, because all of them, they have put veil in order to fool Cesario. And Olivia says, speak to me, I shall answer for her. Your will? Cesario, most radiant, exquisite and unmatchable beauty, I pray you, tell me, if this be the lady of the house, for I never saw her, I would be loth to cast away my speech, for besides that is excellently well penned, and I have taken great pains to con it. Good beauties, let me sustain no scorn. I am very compatible, even to the least sinister usage. So he says, I want to speak to the lady of the house alone, because I have made a beautiful speech, and it is being carefully written, and I don't want to waste it on a servant or a maid. Whence came you, sir? I can say a little more than I have studied, and that question is out of my part. I don't have to answer that part, because I have come to woo for my lord. I won't tell anything else. Good gentle one, give me modest assurance, if you be the lady of the house, that I may proceed in my speech. So if you assure me that if you are the lady of the house, I will proceed with my speech. Are you a comedian? Know my profound heart. And yet, by the very fangs of malice I wear, I am not that play. Are you the lady of the house? Again, there is this comment on, I am not that I play. Comment on, I am not what I am. Again, we find, this being repeated in Othello, in Hamlet. I am not that I play. No, I am someone different. Are you the lady of the house? If I do not usurp myself, I am. All right. Yes, if I am not, I am actually the lady of the house. Most certain, if you are she, you do usurp yourself, for what is yours to bestow is not yours to reserve. But this is from my commission. I will on with my speech in your praise, and then show you the heart of my message. So I will actually give the speech first, and I will show the message. Come to what is important. I forgive you the praise. You don't have to praise me and sing about my beauty or so. You can come to the point directly. Alas, I took great pains to study it, and it's very poetical. It's more like to be feigned. It is you are pretending. It's not original. I pray you, keep it in. I heard you were saucy at my gates. You were having, you are making quarrels with my kinsman, Sir Toby, and allowed your approach rather to wonder at you than to hear you. If you be not mad, be gone. If you have reason, be brief. It's not that time of moan with me to make one in so skipping a dialogue. I don't want to play with you. If you want to pass a message, be brief. Will you hoist sail, sir? Here lies your way. If you want, you can leave. Maria also says, no, good swabber, I am to hull here a little longer, and I will anchor here for longer. Some mollification for your giant, sweet lady. Tell me your mind, I am a messenger. Sure, you have some hideous matter to deliver. When the courtesy of it is so fearful, speak your office. Cesario, it alone concerns your ear, and I want to speak to you alone. I bring no overture or war, I won't hurt you, and I just want to deliver this message alone. Yet you began rudely. What are you? What would you? The rudeness that hath appeared in me have I learned from my entertainment. What I am, because I was rude at the gate, because I was denied entrance. Otherwise I have come in peace, and I don't make any issues here. Olivia, give us the place alone. We will hear this divinity, what he wants to tell me. And now we have Viola and Olivia alone. Maria and other attendants, they leave. Cesario, most sweet lady, a comfortable doctrine, and much may be said of it. Where lies your text? In Orsino's bosom. In his bosom? In what chapter of his bosom? To answer, by the method in the first of his heart. Oh, I have read it. It is hearsay. Have you no more to say? I have already heard that message, days before. I don't want to hear it again. Do you have any other message? Good madam, let me see your face. Have you any commission from your lord to negotiate with my face? You are now out of your text, but we will draw the curtain and show you the picture. So now you are actually, you are not commissioned to see my face or view my face, but nevertheless, I will show you my face. And she removes the veil. Look you, sir, such a one I was this present. It's not well, isn't it well done? Like she says, don't you think that I am beautiful? Cesario, excellently done. If God did all, so again there is this comment on, if God did all this, it is excellent. If it is natural, it is excellent. These Elizabethans, they have this preoccupation with makeup. These Elizabethan men, they hated makeup and all these artificialities. So he says, Cesario says, if God did everything, or if it is natural, it is excellent. Then Olivia says, it's in the grains, sir, will endure wind and weather. So if it is a makeup, it will not endure wind and weather, but it is in the grains, it is innate, it will stand wind and weather. Voila. Its beauty truly bent, whose red and white nature's own sweet and cunning hand laid on. Lady, you are the cruelest she alive, if you will lead these graces to the grave and leave the world no copy. So you are such a beautiful person, and if you go to the grave without leaving a copy, without giving a child, the same beauty, you are being you are a cruel person for that. Oh sir, I will not be so hard-hearted and give you diverse schedules of my beauty. It shall be invented, and every particle and utensil labeled to my will. 2 lips in different red, 2 eyes. Like she also makes pun on the words used by Cesario and says, I will not do that, and I will leave a copy, of course. I see what you are. You are too proud, but if you were the devil, you are fair. My Lord and Master loves you. Of such love could not be recompensed, though you were crowned to the non-parallel of beauty. Like you are you are so beautiful, but you cannot deny, or what he says is that nothing can recompense the Duke's love for Lady Olivia. So he says he wants to woo on the behalf of his master. And again, we find this Olivia Cesario making certain, trying to negotiate with Olivia, saying, with adorations, fertile tears, with groans that thunder love, and with sighs of fire, and my Lord loves you. But on the other hand, Olivia tries, we find that, Olivia gets attracted to this messenger Cesario and entertains him and allows him to talk, because she wants to know more about Cesario. We'll come to that line. He asks about, all right, come to line 239. Then Olivia is not bothered about how this Cesario is wooing for the Duke. She's not, she's deaf to that. But she says, you might do much. What is your parentage? But Cesario asks, above my fortunes, yet my state is well. I am a gentleman. She doesn't give a straight answer to Olivia's question. And then they bid farewell. Get you to your lord, I cannot love him. Let him send no more, unless perchance you come to me again to tell me how he takes it. So I don't want any other messengers to come again and to woo me on his behalf. But if you are sent, if you want to let me come and let me know how he has taken it, you can come. We find there is some sort of attraction that has that has happened between this Olivia and Cesario. She's attracted to Cesario. And Viola leaves, and Olivia contemplates on what is his parentage, above my fortunes, yet my state is well. We find that, he is, she's actually falling in love with Cesario. She says, not too fast, her heart is beating faster. Soft, unless the master were the man. How now? Even so quickly may one catch the plague, catch the plague of love. How fast one falls in love. Methinks I feel this youth's perfections with an invisible and subtle stealth to creep in at mine eyes. Well, let it be. Oh, what ho, Malvolio. So, okay, anyways, she immediately calls Malvolio and she makes a prank. She says, she takes a ring from her hand and says, this is a ring that Cesario has given me. I don't want to take it. You please go and give this back to Cesario. And Malvolio is running after Cesario and says, so Malvolio goes, Malvolio, here madam at your service. Olivia, run after the same peevish messenger the Count's man, he left this ring behind him. Would I or not? Tell him I will none of it. Desire him not to flatter with his lot, nor hold him up with hopes. I am not for him. If that the youth will come this way tomorrow, I will give him reasons for it. Here the Malvolio so says, tomorrow ask the youth to come back. So she was hoping that, if I send this ring back, to Cesario will come back another day to say that he has not actually given the ring, and she actually wants Cesario to come back again, and for that he makes this prank. Malvolio, Madam, I will. Olivia, I do. I know not what, and fear to find mine I too great a flatterer for my mind. Fate, show thy face. Show thy force. She says, I don't know what fate is waiting for me. Ourselves we do not owe. What is decreed must be, and be this so. So we don't owe anything. What is decreed on our lives by fate. We will. Excuse me. What is decreed must be done in my life. So she's open to fate, and we find this twist in the first scene itself. So this is how the first scene excuse me, first act ends. We are introduced to all the main characters except Sebastian, who comes very late, and we find the twist. We find how Viola has fallen in love with the Duke, and we find how Lady Olivia has fallen in love with the Duke. So this is how the story starts. The action complicates, and we'll take this act 2 in the next class. So please read this act 1. All of you please read, and please note down doubts, and in the next class if you need any clarifications, please ask me. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.